And for the first time in the entire match, he dropped his head, which to me, I was like, that's blood in the water. And so I did one more snap. He put his head down. He came up, and I'm like, yep, it's go time. He's feeling it.
Hey friends, welcome to Rugged. Young adulting is tough, and I'm here to show you how to make it easy. You'll learn mindset strategies to harness your thoughts and emotions in ways that help you achieve your goals. I'm your host, Trey Tucker, so let's dive right in. Wyatt Hendrickson pulled off one of the biggest upsets in sports history and the biggest upset in wrestling history. The win sparked a national media frenzy, but for the first time, he's about to tell the story himself through his eyes. He'll tell us how he stayed calm with the world watching and President Trump in attendance, and how he built the mindset that powered him to keep going nonstop until the other guy breaks. You're going to absolutely love this guy.
All right, so Wyatt, a lot of people know the story of the upset, the epic upset, and the media has told it all kind of different times, different ways, but I don't think I've ever heard you tell it through your eyes. So would you mind just telling the story as you saw it?
Absolutely. So like you said, when a lot of people talk about this, that mostly what they think about is, oh, the walkout, the match, the everything in the end. But I'll take you back. I'm gonna give you the whole day, and I'm gonna give you since the night before. So obviously, I wrestled Greg Kirklevet, national champion, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna face Gable Steveson. That's when I had my first media press right after I wrestled Greg. And at that moment, I was kind of already, I'm not going to say locked in, but I was focused. And this wasn't like, oh, I made it to the finals to wrestle Gable, because in the past, when anyone's wrestled Gable Steveson, it is, and for those who don't know, Gable Steveson, Olympic gold medalist, hasn't lost or been taken down, I think, since like 2019, or crazy stats, two-time national champion, very accoladed wrestler. And when most people have gone up against him, they're like, oh, like, yeah, like I wrestled for second place. And all the way since that interview, they're like, hey, what's it going to take for you to be a national champion tomorrow evening? And I'm like, I'm going to have to believe myself, and I'm going to have to stick to the basics and do the basics really well. So, I mean, if you go back to that interview, I had that confident attitude right off the bat, because you can't go into a match like this with questions like, oh, or any doubts, like, oh, I don't know how this is going to go. And I'll touch more about how I deal with those doubts later. But I went back, and the coaches, we didn't really, the whole year. Also, Gable joined halfway through the season, so he wasn't there from the beginning. He just decided to come join wrestling college halfway through the season. The coaches, I never even talked about it. And, wow. we never mentioned it. And even that night, they were like, man, you ready to wrestle tomorrow? You excited? And I said, yes, I am. And so, I had the best night of sleep I could have asked for, like 9 hours of sleep, woke up.
Wow.
I know. That's usually what happens, is when your emotions get going. And that time, something was different. Because I was like, usually I get nervous for stuff like this, but I was just calm. Especially you think about what was going to be going on. I knew the president was going to be there. It's NCAA finals against Gable Steveson. There's a bunch of, big people there, 18,000 fans. You think of the situation, that's usually where I'd be getting a little bit amped up, but, the coaches, it was just another day for me. And I thought back to, when have I wrestled my best here in Stillwater? Well, I'm not walking around the locker room before practice like, all right, I'm not hyping myself up. I'm going to go have a great practice today, I've always just been my best, and I'm just relaxed, I'm calm, and I'm just clear-minded. And so I thought back to we always have matches in the wrestling room, which are just simulations, you're wrestling with a buddy, simulation matches, and I've wrestled my best whenever I come and relax. I just warm up, and I just do what I do. So the day of nationals, woke up, like I said, had a good breakfast, went on a walk, I think I watched a little bit of YouTube for a little bit. I didn't really want to change anything, because as soon as you put the situation up on a pedestal, you're setting yourself up for failure. You're making it something bigger. And that's when you bring in your emotions. That's when you start bringing in those negative effects of a big situation like that. So I made it emphasis to just relax. It's just any other day. And we did have to come in a little bit early because President Trump was going to be there, and there's security concerns. So I just had a normal day. I went to the back, threw on my headphones, threw on some Netflix, and just started hanging out. So from 24 hours out, I was already trying to set myself up for success by relaxing and not hyping myself up. Because in the past, where I've had, I'm going to say, some more failures, is when I get overexcited too fast. I'm like, oh, I get to do this tomorrow. And your emotions wear you out. I mean, for those who are athletes, I'm sure you even understand that, is that in a lot of situations, you wear yourself out. And in stuff like this, I was like, I want to have everything set up the way I need to have it. And I had to stay away from that. But obviously up until the match, our 174 pounder, Dean Hamidi, he actually wrestled and he won. He was a national champion as well. And I do remember that match because that's when I started to get emotionally involved a little bit. The warm-up area we were in, there was a TV of what was going on out there. And I could see him wrestling, and his match was a crazy match. But my coaches were doing good to like, hey man, just remember, you still got to wrestle. Don't get too emotionally involved watching your teammate. But
Right.
I mean, I had the best warm-up I could have asked for, and I was just ready to go. There was one point where and I'd already pre-decided that I'm going to wrestle a great match. I'm not going to leave this up to chance. And so obviously fast forward a little bit, and I actually almost got stopped in one of the wrestling mat. The security said, hey, you can't go this way. You got to walk around the arena. And my coaches were like, dude, I'm wrestling. And they're like, I don't care. You're not going through. Luckily, one of the security guards somewhere kind of knew, he knew me somehow, I think, through the Air Force. And he was like, hey, this guy's wrestling. Let's get him through. And they were supposed to let me through, I think, but they were just giving me trouble. And the coaches were like, oh my gosh, but I didn't let that get to me.
Can we pause for a second? Like that alone would have thrown me into a tailspin, just that unexpected turn. And then I'm thinking about what you said a minute ago about how in the past you got too worked up in matches and kind of wore yourself out early, too worked up before matches and wore yourself out early. So did you just like tell yourself, all right, this time I'm going to relax, and it happened? Or go back, how did you make yourself relax this time?
Absolutely. So obviously a big part of my life is my faith. And this is what's so important, I think, what I've realized on the mental aspect of stuff and also having faith. So obviously as a Christian, you live by faith, not by sight. Obviously, if you could see what you want, it's right there. You don't have to have very much faith because it's right there. But the more experience I've had over wrestling, whenever I try to do it by myself, I see that I struggle. And I realize I can't do it by myself. But whenever I realized that, hey, I can't do this life by myself. And obviously I know that I need my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, or our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, in anything I do. It's moments like that where God will bless you and he blesses me to be there. Because if I just sat there and I was like, I want to wrestle, great, I'm doing this, me, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I mean, sometimes it'll work. But on those big stages, you need only one person in this entire universe can bless you with that kind of patience and calmness to do something like that. So even throughout that match, as I'll get to a little bit, just the Holy Spirit running through me. I'm not saying that just to say, I'm saying because it's the truth. And it's moments like that where the faith shows, because I mean, in the past, I've been pretty calm, but this time, I've had probably the best year. I've been the closest to God I've ever been. And I knew that he was going to use me for something great. And I truly think he has so far, and there's still more to come. But yeah, so that's the first part of it is, I need to know that wherever I'm getting this calmness from, that's an aspect of it is my faith. But obviously with that, I was like, I knew that I had to focus, and your brain is so powerful, and what you tell yourself, he who thinks he can and he who thinks he can't are both usually right. That's one of my favorite quotes because it's so true. When I go out there and wrestle, I'm not going out there like, man, like I think I want to win this match, because if I'm down by, 2-3 points, if I'm down for 3 points and there's 30 seconds left, and I'm like, I might not go get those shots. I'm like, you know what? I'm okay. I'm content with losing this match because it's whatever. But when I go in there like, hey, I'm going to wrestle to win this match, that mindset, when there's 30 seconds left, I'm going to shoot. I'm like, I need to win this match because I know I'm going to win this match. So I'm going to find a way. So there's a couple aspects there to balance, but you just kind of have to carry that with you into the match in anything in life, that attitude and that mindset. Because that's one thing too. It's not just your mindset; it's your attitude. It's the attitude in everything you do. My training this year, whether it's a circuit, whether it's a lift, whether it's a wrestling practice, my attitude was go nonstop until the other guy breaks. I'm not going to change that if I wrestle a different opponent. So going into that match, I'm like, my attitude's there, my confidence is there. I believe I can do this, and that's going to change. We could have a whole health discussion about how stress and how mindset affects the rest of your body, your reactions and stuff. And moments like that, you just kind of, there can't be any questions in a moment like that, because obviously you're going to, as you see it, I've had a lot of matches where I've lost in the past because I might have been a better wrestler, but maybe I was overthinking, I wasn't prepared or something like that. But obviously went out there, wrestled a great match. And, that feeling lasted for a while. I could not sleep for a couple nights. I mean, I did go to bed finally like 3 o'clock in the morning, but I was just rewatching that video. I'm like, obviously you set high goals for yourself. You want to achieve those goals. And as soon as it's obviously you see it on paper, but as soon as you actually do, it feels amazing. I was obviously excited. I just won the national championship, but I mean, I just kept rewatching. I think I put on YouTube and kept, so many people had so many awesome remakes of this stuff and a bunch of Instagram reels. And that was the funnest thing ever. Just on my TV, just clicking through them, having a good time. But I mean, it was a couple weeks and I was still just like, I was just so excited. There was so much excitement around everything. And I think after a couple weeks, it kind of finally maybe wore off a little bit. Probably about a month. It was just pure excitement every single day.
I bet. So going back to that moment where the security guard almost didn't let you out of the tunnel, do you remember anything that happened from that point on? Or at that point, did you just kind of go subconscious and just do your thing?
Yeah, so obviously I didn't actually really say anything. My coaches were there. I mean, I looked and he's like, stop right there. And my coaches just like kept walking like we know we're supposed to be here. It's fine. And I sat there. I looked at the guy who was sitting down in a suit, of course. He was sitting down. He was like, hey, you can't go that way. I looked at my coach. I'm like, just come on, Wyatt. I look at him. You can't go that way. And he's like, come on. And then the coach just moved like, he's wrestling next. And another security guard on the other side like of the tunnel was like, hey, let him through. He's wrestling. So I actually just sat there and I was just like, all right, that was that. But so the moment when when I describe this moment of the wrestling match, the best way I can describe it is I've seen the movie Creed. If you've seen the movie Creed, there's a final boxing scene where it's just him and his opponent in the ring. There's no one in the crowd. There's just one spotlight on the center. About 3 minutes before I went out there, I had one final prayer with my coach. I'm like, all right, coaches, I know we prayed like 5 times. I need one more. I said, bring it in. We started final prayer, and I was just like, that was it. That's all. I don't remember really the run out, and that's another big thing is the run out too, and that mentality piece. When I ran out, I was locked in. Like I just said, I was just me in the center mat. I couldn't really hear anything. I was just like, hey, I could feel a little bit of the crowd, but it's so crazy how when I get locked in, I can't hear anything. I have tunnel vision. I can't see the crowd. And I remember I just looked up and Gable was there and I was like, oh, he's probably coming to shake my hand. So I just shook his hand and went back to my corner. I didn't know that anything was like going on until after the match. I'm like, I think he was trying to big dog me or something. And I think it got in his head more than it didn't get in my head when he did that. So if you've seen the match, you have it. He was standing in the center of the mat with his arms open, like he owned the place. And then he tried to come, and I was wearing the American flag. Obviously I serve this great country. I'm very proud of that. So while, there's no problem with me doing that, Gable Steveson has won an Olympic gold medal. And obviously I don't know how he took it, whatever, but it seemed like that rattled him a little bit, or he maybe just, whatever the fact is, it made him feel a certain type of way. And, yeah, I mean, it didn't really faze me. I don't remember that at all, but that entire wrestling match it's just muscle memory. I didn't actually do any thinking in that match. The work has been put in for the past, you don't show up to the national tournament and decide to be a national champion. You got to decide that months and months. I decided, 8-9 months ago, I'm going to be a national champion, because that set the tone for all of my training the next 7-8 months, 8-9 months. And so there was no thinking really at the national tournament. It was really just putting on display what I've been able to learn over the past, ultimately the last 20 years of my life wrestling. But obviously I've made a lot of improvements over this last year, but it was a good match. It felt good.
I mean, you made a great point about not thinking, because that's when I work with athletes on mindset, that's the main message I keep trying to tell them, is that if you're out there thinking, no matter what the sport is, you're going to be slow, you won't be strong, you won't be explosive. If you can just go out there and react, that's the ultimate mindset. But like you said, you can't just decide, all right, I'm not going to think. It has to be built in from the 9 to 12 months of training before, and also your whole career before. But like you said, that mindset doesn't come automatically. So I'm so glad you mentioned that about the not thinking and just reacting.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, like you said, that goes for all sports. And my dad always said, hey, there's 8 steps to the top of the podium and only one person gets to be at the top. And Well, he'd always say that to me after I complained about hard work. Because my wrestling background, I didn't become a great wrestler because of my technique. I just had a will to win. And my dad growing up, I loved to be smart, find shortcuts. If we're laying rock, I'm like, hey dad, let's get the wheelbarrow and throw the 20 heavy rocks in here and we'll walk them down versus carry them all one by one. And he's like, son, don't worry about it. Just pick up a rock and keep going. No, you chop wood, carry water. If you've ever read that book, you understand that reference. But he's pretty much just like, what are you doing? And that kind of from an early age, dude, we planted thousands of trees by hand on the property back in Kansas on the ranch. And the watering trees, it's been a lot of work, but most of it was I finally stopped looking for shortcuts and just did the work. And that was such a great foundation because when it came to wrestling, I wasn't looking for a lot of wrestlers like, oh, what's your secret? Or, oh, like, what's the best supplement to take? Or, oh, what's the best workouts to do? And I'm like, you guys are overthinking it. Just go wrestle hard and have fun. Like, you're going too far. So my whole wrestling career was based off of work harder, not smarter, which is, the opposite of what we like to say in the Air Force. But that foundation, I would win most of my matches, not because I was more technically sound than my opponent, but I'd be losing by 2-3 takedowns in the third period, but I would just keep coming at them and they would just break and I beat them. So that foundation was probably the best foundation I could have asked for in my wrestling career. Cause then that's the hard work is already done. Cause most guys are afraid of the hard work. They don't want to go wrestle 20 hours a week. They don't want to go to the gym 4 times a week. They're not willing to put in all that time it takes to be a champion. So whenever I complain, my dad was like, hey, son, you don't have to go all the way to the top of the podium because there's only one guy that does that and you need to be the hardest worker, and so he kind of just encouraged me throughout those times, reminded me of that. And that's so true because it can be daunting. It can be scary because you're looking at it and you're just like, man, they say the 10,000 hour rule. I've been wrestling since I was 5. If someone told me I was 5 years old, like, hey, by the way, you have to wrestle by 10,000 hours before you get good at the sport, I'm going to be like, oh my gosh. But it's just one of those things where you don't worry about tomorrow. You don't worry about next week. You don't worry about next month. You take it day by day. And even practice by practice, hour by hour, 5 minutes at a time by 5 minutes, whatever it takes, rep by rep. Because you will get scared and you'll daunt yourself and you'll start to overthink like we just talked about and you'll start to it's like, don't even worry about that. Just focus on where your feet are planted and just do the task at hand and everything else will take care of itself. Because if you can take it minute by minute every single day, looking back at a couple of years, you'll be like, wow, I really accomplished that.
Gosh, that's so good, man. And that I think is probably one of the recipes or one of the ingredients that allows you to keep coming at somebody until they break. Because if you stay in the moment and you rely on all the training you've had, you're going to break way later than they are. So that's got to give you some confidence, I would think.
Oh, absolutely. And I love you said that because like I said, my attitude, my mindset going to these matches, guys hated wrestling me. They did not like it because they've seen me wrestle and they already know that I refuse to give up. And they're just thinking like, man, it's going to take this to wrestle with this guy. And they're just like, I don't want to do that. I've had matches in the past where people just forfeit. They're like, you know what? I'm not even going to wrestle this dude. And I mean, to me, I'm like, that's pretty sweet because I kind of developed that reputation and people know it. They're just like, I know that I can't stall. I can't stay away from this guy because he's just going to keep coming after me the entire match. And so that's probably a good thing I've had in my back pocket is I've obviously put in the hard work, but I can't rely on that. Obviously that's good. That's cool. But that's not the reason I'm doing this. But that does help because whenever I go in there, I know that I'm not going to break. The other guy knows I'm not going to break. So they're like, well, what can I do then? Which is kind of fun sometimes because they're just running away. And I'm like, dude, come on, but.
So in the match itself with Gable, I know it came down to the end. Would you characterize it by saying that he broke first or was it a different way that it went down?
So I think I did all the right things very well. Before I went out in that match, like I said, it's important. You can't be thinking about everything that's going on. And really, Coach David Taylor, who's my coach, also Olympic gold medalist, he just said, hey, have fun, be patient, and make it hard on them. So the biggest thing that because when I was wrestling, obviously I'm not thinking about that. He's not like, hey, right leg lead, you're going to have a high crotch. It's not like that. It's just friendly reminders. And so by making it hard, whenever Gable shoots or does something, most of the time he finishes. And from the very first period, I made it hard on him. He had a shot and I scrambled out of it and he didn't score. I almost scored on him. So something like that mentally, making it hard on him, he was like, oh crap, like this guy can wrestle. So that set the pace for the rest of the match right off the bat. And that probably wore him out and stressed him out. He probably wasn't expecting that. Everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the face. And just like Mike Tyson said. And I do remember the moment where I'm going to say, I don't know if he broke, but he started to like, oh shoot, he started to get pretty tired because this is what was happening. I am obviously, if you watch me wrestle, I do a lot of fakes. I do a lot of snaps. I'm a go, go, go type of wrestler. And in those last 45 seconds, I was snapping, I was faking. And for the first time in the entire match, he dropped his head, which to me, I was like, that's blood in the water. And so I did one more snap. He put his head down. He came up and I'm like, yep, it's go time. He's feeling it. And actually, I'm going to back up a little bit more. End of the second period, he was in on a shot. Didn't get the takedown. Everyone knew he didn't get the takedown. It wasn't that close of a call. He's looking at his ref or his coaches. Hey, well, throw the brick. Throw the brick. I'm like, this dude's tired because he knew he didn't get the takedown. And I think he hurt himself there because all I looked at, I'm like, we both know that wasn't a takedown, not even close. And even on the review, they're like, that's a weird challenge. Like his foot's hooked. He's not even behind him, but he just needed a break. And so that's when I was like, okay, it's getting close because I had to make it hard on him. It took me 6.5 minutes of wearing him down to get myself in a situation of where I can shoot. And when I did take that shot, I mean, he didn't really have the energy to fully defend it. Obviously, he kind of broke it off at first, but I was just relentless. I kept driving and driving and driving. And the way I got that takedown, he's always been able to defend stuff like that, but he was just out of juice. I think I got to him mentally and physically, and then I got that takedown. And then he was really like, what the heck just happened? What's going on? And so that's when I was like, all right, I still had like 20 seconds to hold him down. So I knew the match wasn't over, but I already made up my mind. I'm like, I'm not letting this guy go. I don't care if my life depends on it. Cause I'm like, if I could have let him up, would have gone into overtime. I'm like, not leaving this up to anything. I'm finishing this here and now. And so it was a good feeling. Cause I remember that a moment very just, oh my goodness, in my brain when he went and his head went down. I don't think he's ever dropped his head in for a long time. That's all like, this is my chance. Here we go. And I went and got it.
Yeah. The lack of energy in him gave you the energy that went in your favor.
People feel that too. That's a real thing. Whenever you smell blood in the water, something about it just gets you fired up. I mean, there's like, even when I'm drilling with some of the guys sometimes and we're hand fighting, sometimes I'll like, if I accidentally hit them too hard or something and they get a little fired up or they feel it, I'm like, oh, you just get that extra burst of energy. It's so psychological, but you're like, oh my goodness. It's just something about it that it just gives you an extra boost of confidence.
Heck yeah. I love how you said it, blood in the water too. So is it, at that point, the match is over, unless there was something else you wanted to describe that part, but match ends. And then do you start being aware of the crowd at that point? Because I know earlier you said you weren't really aware of it. You were so locked in. What happened next?
I mean, I like to say I tried to stand up and I just fell back. I was just like, I don't know. I kind of blacked out. And I was just like, that was sweet. My coaches come over. They're pummeling me in the face. I'm getting wrecked. And I'm like, oh yeah, I'm right. And so I try to jump up. I push the coaches off and I'm just like, the only things I thought about was, I was like, where's my family at? I knew they were close. I ran down to them, saw my fiance, saw my mom, my dad, and my best friend, Calvin. And, I was there for them. And then there's a quote that obviously I've seen the movie Troy, but someone who's been really close to me in my life, his name is Tucker Lane. He wrestled for Nebraska, for the Huskers. When I was a little kid, I think I was maybe 11, 12 years old, I went to one of his duels and he went and won a big overtime match and he just looked at the crowd and went, is there no one else? And I was like, that is the coolest thing I think I've ever heard. And that just popped right into my head after I beat him. I walked over the mat and I'm like, is there no one else? And so there's only a couple people taught that, which I don't care. I was just like, that was pretty sweet because I had ultimately, I had defeated everyone. Gable was arguably the best wrestler in the world. And I just took him down in an awesome NCAA's finals match. So it was just a good feeling. And then obviously I was like, oh yeah, my Commander-in-Chief's here, President Trump. Let's go ahead and pop him a salute, show him some respect. And so it was all of it just, I remember it, but I don't remember it. It's so hard. Just so many emotions were just going out at that time because all that hard, the biggest thing that was going through my mind was ever since I was a little kid, my dad, he's been preaching me like, hey, son, God has chosen you for something amazing. He's blessed you. I don't know what it is yet, but God has chosen you to represent him on the biggest stage in the world. And it's moments like that where when I went and saw my dad and gave him a hug, we didn't say anything because we both kind of knew it's stuff like that. When you see it play out, there's nothing to say. And so just after that match, it was almost done. My dad and I, but I think I went to the podium, but then I saw my dad and we just kind of hugged for a couple minutes. Didn't really say anything. It was just, there's no words that were needed to be said, but it was, yeah, I think I couldn't fall asleep then. I think I went to bed at like 3. I actually wasn't out. I think I had like half a beer maybe or something, but I was just like excited, you know, it was a great moment. My body couldn't calm down. It was still just like, oh, just pure excitement. It was good.
That's right. That adrenaline and all the other happy chemicals were probably maxed out like never before in your life.
Dude, it was at max of, yeah, absolutely. Yes, I agree.
Do you remember what President Trump said to you, or was that all a blur?
So I do. And this is also something that's super special is whenever like, you know, I'm going to say a celebrity, but a celebrity goes to an event, there's like, oh, good job, you know, good game, great effort, all that stuff. And when I went over to him, I was obviously super excited. He had a pretty straight face and he was like, man, that took heart. He's like, that right there, what you just did. He's like, that took heart. Congratulations. And I was like, you know, just having that, like, yeah, of course he could have been like, great job, good job, man. I'm proud of you, you know. But the fact that he was like, it resonated because he was like, hey, I understand. I'm sure he's done a lot of stuff in his life that probably took a lot of heart too. And so having him kind of understand that and have him feel that energy of what just happened, that match, that meant a lot. And it was awesome. And then after that, obviously I had the interview, and I remember trying to speak, but I just couldn't really speak. If you look at the interview after the match, he's like, you just saw the president. What did he say to you? In my brain, he's like, I was like, I'm very proud. He's very proud. I was just like, because I mean, I just wrestled a match too. My heart was beating out of my chest. My legs were heavy. I'm like, I'm struggling to walk, man, but I'm trying to talk to you guys right now. But I kind of went in autopilot, and luckily, you know, it just, everything worked out. It worked out okay, but it was all a lot of emotions, a lot of excitement for sure.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. That's so fun to hear the story from you, because I've obviously seen the match and hear the media reports, but hearing it from you is just amazing. But are there any parts that you didn't get to talk about of that particular night, or the aftermath, or any takeaways that you kind of learned through the experience? Because I want to hear about your background, your life that led up to this moment. But before we do that, anything else from that night?
Well, I mean, that's the first time when I couldn't go anywhere without anyone stopping me. That was interesting. I mean, after something like that, people were like, I mean, I'm like, you know, I like being a small town guy. I do all my own stuff. You know, there's nothing crazy. But then that night, everyone was like everywhere. I mean, we went to one place. We had a reception for the OSU wrestlers, and I was excited. But I think it took me an hour and a half before I could get to my seat and get sat down. I had to have like my mom, my dad, my fiance, my buddy, like try to block off the end so I could eat some food, because even sitting in the middle, people like, can I get a picture, please? Can I get a picture? I'm like, just give me a second. I don't think I had a drink of water till about 2 hours after the match. Cause I was just, I mean, obviously media interviews going all over the place, the podium and everything. I don't know, my body, I mean, I was thirsty, but my body just kind of handled it. But I thought it was a good time. But that's pretty much it for the rest of that night. And then obviously I remember the next morning on our flight back, I was just like on the plane, just like, whoa, you know, like just, that just happened, you know, everything was still at a 10. It was still up there. So no, it was a good time.
I love it. You talked earlier about your training routine. Can you take people into just what does a typical day look like for you in the off season, and then maybe during the season as well? Because I know those days look different, but just to give people an idea of here's what it takes on a day in, day out basis to become a winner.
Absolutely. This is super important. And this is something I didn't realize until, you know, a couple of years ago. A lot of people like to take, and you have to, if you want to be really good at a sport, you need to dedicate a lot of time to it, a lot of practice. And most high school, and you probably need to start this in high school. I didn't really, I did sometimes, but Summer, people look at summer as your time to relax. And yes, it is to an extent. Obviously, don't run yourself down all the time. It's okay to take some time off. But going back to, I mentioned Tucker Lane. When I was a kid and he'd come over, we were like his sponsor family. He'd come over for Christmas or Thanksgiving. They would train twice as hard on holidays.
Yeah.
And I was like, what are you guys doing? They're like, well, because we know that everyone else is going to take this day off and we want to get better. And so ever since at that age, I kind of in my mind and, not all day. You're still spending time with your family, but you're putting that work in. And I say that because a lot of people in the summer take that time off and mess around and look. And as soon as August or whatever comes back to college season or high school season, then you start getting back in the wrestling room. Last summer was the hardest summer I've had of my life in wrestling.
Yeah.
The season was the easy part because I knew all the hay was in the barn. We put most of that work in, and we're still getting better throughout the season. But the foundation we built in the summer is what elevated everyone in the wrestling room because we came in and worked hard all summer long. Obviously, we had weeks off. We had time off here and there, but you can't not put in the work and then expect to reach the top because what it takes to be the best, at least in wrestling, is you need to be, because there's two things. There's only two paths in wrestling. You're getting better or you're getting worse. There's no stay the same. People think, oh, if I don't train, whatever, I'll just, wrong. You're getting better, you're getting worse. And so if you just take all summer off, when you start training again, well, you're going to probably end up where you left off. You're not going to make that much progress every year because, you get better in season, take summer off, come back to season wrestle, take summer off, but you're not really going to get any better. So obviously we took some time off after, but in the summers we want to put in the hard work. So the summers are actually probably the most, I have one more tournament in a month, but we're still getting in work. My body is destroyed right now because I have no competition. We can do that to our bodies. We're training our bodies right now to be able to go through it. So when we get to the season next year, we can take it easy, but our bodies are used to going through the ringer. So when we wrestle tough matches, tournaments, back-to-back duels, our bodies are like, dude, this is cake. You always want to, like, if you were protected by a bulletproof vehicle in the glass, are you going to want, like, if you get shot with a 9mm or whatever, are you going to want a thing that can just handle right up to that? Or are you going to want to have one that can withstand 20 times that force? What are you going to feel more powerful with? I want that I want something that can stop a 50 cal, a giant bullet, because that gives you that confidence. Because when you're wrestling, if I'm like, hey, I've already trained this hard, I can stop 10 of these things. It's going to be awesome. If you're just trained just to get enough, that's not going to give you much confidence. Because if you see it taking a deep waters or your opponent, makes it hard on you, you're going to be like, oh, I've never felt this before. This is really tough. I've never had to work this hard. And you're going to lose those matches. So we set our expectations so high that we're like, no one will be able to compete with us because we're too dedicated to the sport. We're too well trained. We put in too much work. And we've outworked everyone. That's most of it as well.
Man. Okay. There's so much I want to ask about on a really practical level. The physical training aspect, tons of discipline there. I would imagine the eating is just as, if not more, discipline. What's your eating look like in the off season and then in the in season?
Absolutely. So, I love beef and venison. I'm a big, we get a cow every year. I go hunting, I get my buck. And so a good ground beef mix between ground beef and venison, that's probably the majority of my meals. And luckily here at Oklahoma State, we had something called training table. So they had breakfast and dinner for us, which was the best thing ever.
Yeah.
Wake up, usually get they had rice on Mondays and Thursdays, which I love for breakfast. A little bit of carbs before wrestling, but eggs, pretty much if I eat anything but processed stuff. Now I do still eat processed stuff sometimes, I got to treat myself here and there, but
right, you got to live.
But yeah, exactly. But most of it's a pretty animal-based diet. We drink the milk I try to drink is, just straight from the farm down the road. Obviously drink it fast. Don't want to get sick, but, eggs, beef, and it's, you kind of find those foods because after you find what works for you and your body and how you can wrestle your best, you don't want to eat anything else because I've had practices where I didn't have a good diet a day or two before and I wrestled like crap. And it was just a practice, but I was like, man, if I wrestle this way in competition, I mean, yeah, I could, even some days at my worst, I might be able to beat those guys, but I'm like, dude, I want to feel my best every time I step out on the mat. And so, I mean, salmon, a lot of, I got into avocados a lot. And I started making my own sweet potato fries and stuff like that to taste good, but it's also still good for you. Getting those fats, you got to make sure your brain's working. So
Sir.
as soon as, yeah, I think as a kid, I never understood that. Maybe a little bit. I mean, as a kid, I mean, say in high school. But as soon as your body reaches that point where it starts to affect you, as soon as you know the way something makes you feel, you're like, hey, it hits you different. Because I used to eat whatever I want in high school. And we even have some wrestlers here that are adjusting best in the country. And this guy is eating, honey buns sometimes on the way to tournaments. I'm like, dude, what are you doing? But he'll just beat the crap out of everyone. But no, at this level, I think it's important what you put into your body. And that's also going to give you confidence. If I wake up, and this is actually a true story, if I wake up and have a small orange, but then a Mountain Dew and a donut, and I go out there and expect to wrestle well, it's not going to happen. Because I actually, in high school once, I beat everyone the first day, and it was a duel. I'm like, you know what? I'm good enough. I'm going to do this. But then I didn't feel my body well, and I'm like, wow, I got my butt whooped. I said, that sucked.
Is that literally what you ate? You found out the hard way that combination was going to kill you?
Yeah. That's the only time I ever did that, too. I just want to say that because I did do it one time. I'm like, man, that's when I was like, man. Well, and that's what said it, because in college, I'm like, hey, man, I'm not going to have that confidence if I'm doing that. But it was only one time, and it was mainly because I didn't ever drink pop when I was home, and I was like, I was feeling rebellious. My dad wasn't on this trip, but you know what? I'm gonna get a Mountain Dew. Well, my body doesn't run well off that, but that was a terrible, terrible example. But just saying, I know how I wrestle when I eat the right stuff. I mean, my rice, beef, venison, avocados. I know how I feel, and so sometimes if I'm lacking away from my diet, it's like. Or before a big match, if I'm eating the right stuff, I'm like, hey, I've done everything I can. I put in the preparation. I'm fueled the right way. Versus if I didn't eat that much that day or I ate the wrong thing, your brain will be like, I don't know if it's more, that changes your mental state because your brain's going to be what's messing with you. It's going to be like, oh, well, maybe I didn't eat what I usually do. So now I'm not going to wrestle that well. And that's so important. And the coaches preach that a lot. You need to find a rhythm. You need to find a system that works for you. And bring that with you every single trip. The coaches help out a lot with that. They make us these post-recovery smoothies at tournaments. And so it's the same process every single tournament, every single match. It's the same process. So we don't have to think about it. We don't have to worry about it. We know that we're going to be fueled, ready to wrestle no matter what.
Are you tracking macros, calories, protein, carbs, anything like that?
Roughly, all I personally do is I try to have protein in every single meal or snack. That's all I really pay attention to. For me as a heavyweight, now I'm sure some guys do need to do that, but I myself as a wrestler, I'm a heavyweight, so I'm the outlier. I don't need to be as strict on that stuff. Yeah. But being a heavyweight is hard sometimes because people are like, you can eat everything. I'm like, that's the problem. If I wanted to go get a double meat pizza tonight and go get a double chocolate chunk cookie and do it every day, I could because I'm a heavyweight. I have a big weight, but I'm not going to wrestle very well. So it's almost harder because I'm like, hey, I could do this, but lightweights can't do that. They have to be strict or else not making weight. So obviously the little guys work hard, they cut weight, but that's just I could eat whatever I want, but obviously I don't want to. So I think it's a little more difficult, but sure. Yeah.
So the level of discipline it takes to be an elite athlete is one thing, but the level of discipline it takes to be an elite wrestler is a totally different level. It's like you said, if you're either getting better or you're getting worse, there is no status quo, staying the same. So think back to, I'm interested right now in the Air Force, but if some other story hits you, tell that one. But were there stories that happened at the academy that showed you like, okay, I've got what it takes? Or maybe there was a moment where you doubted that you had what it took and you made it through that. Anything that taught you some lessons at the academy or even before that?
Yeah. So first, I just want to say a lot of people would ask me like, hey, how has the military helped you in your wrestling career? And I would say that's a great question, but it's actually reversed. I'd like to tell you how wrestling has helped with my military career because like Dan Gable said, after wrestling, everything else in life is easy. In wrestling, you face so much adversity, you face so much trouble, you face so much of that. You understand what it truly takes sometimes. So after that, I went and did basic training and stuff. I'm like, dude, this is the hardest part for me was doing the knowledge, reading the books, memorizing the quotes, the facts. That was the hard part for me. But at the Air Force Academy, I had a lot of other stuff I was doing, which I loved doing, and I cared about it because at the end of the day, I know I'm an athlete, but I'm like, hey, I want to get a good education. I want to, be a part of something bigger than myself and wrestle at the highest level. And the Air Force Academy hit all three of those. And so that was mainly my focus. I obviously loved wrestling, but I was content with where I was at. And I was like, sometimes there's a difference between like, hey, do I want to get this homework done or get an extra practice in? Sometimes it's hard to do everything. And so I think I was more just focused on my military career. Obviously wrestling was awesome. It was fun. Now going back, if I would have changed my mentality maybe a little bit earlier and been like, you know what, I'm gonna, if I was gonna be more strict on myself, and I just didn't focus as much as I could have. So those potential there, I just didn't use it. And when this year came about, this is like a bonus year. This wasn't supposed to happen. Ever since COVID, everyone who is currently a college wrestler got an additional year of eligibility. And so as soon as this came about, I was like, hey, I need to maximize this opportunity, and I want to be a national champion. I haven't done it yet. I've came close, but I want to make it happen. And so I think just with that, and obviously having a little bit of extra time to recover and practice, all the stars really aligned this year. And I'm grateful for the journey. Obviously I learned a lot the past couple of years, but I just think it was one of those things that maybe if my mentality was a little bit bigger, and that's actually when I got into the mindset stuff, was my junior year of college at the Air Force Academy. And someone said, hey, if you want to get bigger and stronger muscles, are you going to go to the gym? It's like, yes, absolutely. And then they're like, okay. And then the next question he asked was, hey, how much of wrestling do you think is mental? And I think a lot of people were like, oh, it's at least 50% mental. A lot of people are like, oh, it's 80, 90% mental. We're like, yeah, okay. Do you ever train that muscle? And we're like, well, no. I was like, so you're telling me that you think it's 90% based off of your mindset, but you're just training that 10% that matters? And I'm like, oh, that's a good point. So that's when I actually read the book Mind Gym. That's the very first mindset book I ever read. Yeah. And that kind of set off the journey of mindset and how important it is and how it plays with everything, what you tell your brain and how it reacts to that. And I mean, I'm preaching to the choir here. So, that's when I really got that deep dive into really understanding how important it is and how your mental factor, how much of a factor that plays in everything you do, whether it's life, wrestling, because what you tell yourself, man, that's the only thing that matters, is what you tell yourself at the end of the day.
Absolutely. When you started focusing on mindset, was it just books and things like that, or did you have somebody that you could bounce ideas off of?
Yeah, so obviously books are great, but reading is not the most fun thing. I do a lot of audiobooks, but the best thing I would recommend, what I did, is get a mentor. Get someone who understands it. And Coach Joe Johnston at the Air Force Academy, he actually got his degree in a little bit of sports science and mental stuff, a lot of stuff like that. And I really just sit down and talk with him. And, having someone like that to talk with you about that stuff was huge. And then obviously I came here to Oklahoma State. We had Kevin Andrews was awesome, just helping me out of everyday things, whether it was, practice or when I'm not feeling the best, or the most impactful thing was when the emotions are flowing, just small breathing exercises. Like, hey, what do you, he's like, hey, what are you telling yourself in these moments? And so having him help guide me and, go have little sessions like that for an hour or so, just to kind of talk through that stuff. And it's awesome. I remember I used to look at that stuff like a sign of weakness. I'm like, oh, I don't need help. I got this all on my own, But like I just mentioned, having someone even like him, he's one of faith, and having him help me connect the dots on how it all works together. At the end of the day, that's what made it amazing, is because those conversations, it wasn't like something I dread about to you. It was all about myself. He was letting me talk. He was helping me. Everything whenever I went to him, I always gained something from that conversation that was useful. And even down with the national championship, those breathing techniques that he taught me of how to calm myself, what to think about, that's what I was doing right before that match. And the finals match we just talked about. So,
are you willing to share any of that, your breathing techniques or the things you tell yourself?
Yeah. So the biggest thing is whenever like you want to get in a mode, whatever, because my brain would race a lot. It's called like the 4, 3, 2, 1. Pretty much it's like you look for 4 things, smell 3 things, or stuff you see. Honestly, I don't think about that. I just look at everything and smell everything. I do all the senses. I just think about smelling, feeling, I just do everything at once. So that's a big thing that even when like before a wrestling match, I sit there, I feel my feet in my shoes. I feel my headgear on, I feel my singlet, I can smell the aroma of a wrestling mat, and so stuff like that's huge, but also it's different. There's different breathing exercises. There's one to just calm you down, but it was a difference because I'll do in the usual one I do is just inhale for 4 and exhale for 6 because that lowers your heart rate, as you know, exhaling more. But I was doing that and I was and because that's when my heart rate was up. But then my heart rate was up before I was nervous. I was about to wrestle a big match earlier in the season, and I didn't know I needed to be doing something different. So for that one, I think I'd inhale for 4, hold for 4, and then exhale for 4 or 6. So the difference was the hold. That's what, and that after a moment like that, because I went back the next week, I'm like, hey, before this big match, before the Iowa duel, I think I was feeling a little bit type of way because it was going to be a big duel and it was supposed to come down to heavyweight. And I was like, that's obviously a little bit of pressure. And I wasn't as matured on my mental health and everything at the finals at the time yet. But I was like, hey, man, I did that breathing exercise. I don't think it'll work. It's like, oh, well, if you're just getting nervous like that, this is what I need to do now. So it was always awesome because I could always go back and he'd always fill the gaps of where I was missing. But yeah, whenever you're getting amped up a little too emotionally, just close your eyes, inhale for 4, hold it, and then exhale. And that did the trick. I did that right before I walked out on the mat too. Just out of instinct. Just feeling like, hey, no matter what, let's just keep it easy going.
Yeah, because I think you said you learned those in your junior year at Air Force, so you had at least, 2 years to be practicing those where they became habit?
So I just learned this year. That was this year. Yeah. Okay. So that was Kevin Andrews. But so I think the most impactful thing, though, along with those breathing exercises, just mental in a wrestling match. Because when you get taken down, that's not fun. I think the stats are also like 89% of the time, the person who gets the first takedown wins the match. And we talked about that. And Coach Joe Johnston mentioned, he said, imagine you're sitting in a car and a train's coming. And the train's just going by in front of you. You see a box car, you see a next box car, you see a next box car. He's like, hey, that represents your train of thought. He's like, if you're wrestling and something bad happens, the next train car is going to come. So the next thought, try to make that a good thought. Because if the next box car, you tell that car, oh, well, I got taken down, I lost. Or in the next one, oh, he's on top, he's really strong, I'm going to lose. He's like, you need to change that because the next thought's going to come. The next box car is going to come no matter what. Make it a good one. So, oh, you got taken down. Well, hey, I can still get up and I can score on him. Then another one goes by, oh, hey, I'm strong on this guy. I've worked hard. So whenever you're not like thinking, but you're thinking positive stuff. I'm not being that specific. I'm going to do a stand up, it's just like, I got this. I'm still in this match. It's just kind of telling yourself in the moment. And that's something that made a difference because when someone gets taken down, if you kind of, like I said, they smell that blood in the water, that gives them more energy. Why would I want to give my opponent more energy in a situation like that? So it's moments like that where I realized that, hey, let's not fuel their fire. Let's fuel my fire. If you take someone down and they just pop right up, they're like, oh gosh, like this is going to suck. I can't hold this guy down. So that just comes back to the mental aspect of everything and how mental everything really is and the way you present yourself and the attitude you have in those matches. It's not just going to positively affect you. It's going to negatively hit your opponent. He's going to be like, oh shoot, this guy's not going to give up. And that's when I wrestled. Those guys would always just be like, whenever something happened, didn't care. My very first match this year, got taken down the first 5 seconds. But after that, I ended up coming back and teching or pinning and whatever it was. But it was like, he knew it didn't change. It didn't give any confidence because I took it right out of him. Yeah, he got a takedown. 3 seconds, I was out and I was already scoring my stuff. Versus if I get taken down, I'm like, oh man, I got taken down, That could have changed everything. So it's just, it's what you tell yourself. It's what you tell yourself.
Yeah. And we can choose to focus on certain thoughts. We may not be able to control every thought that enters our head, like you're saying with trains coming by as thoughts, but we can choose which ones we're going to really lock in on.
Yeah, exactly.
I love that. Is there anything that I didn't ask that you want to get to? Because this has been amazing. I just want to make sure we covered the stuff you wanted to cover.
Yeah, I think we've got most of it. But I want to come back to, I think I said this in the beginning, and this is it's really with my walk with the Lord and how faith plays into all of this. Obviously, if I've got my cell phone, that's awesome. But if it's dead, I can't use it. I need a charger for that. So for me, I think that when everything that happens is, and I could have my phone, I could have the best apps, I could have everything on this thing, but if I can't access it, what's the point in having it? So really for me, my wrestling career, God's kind of been my charger to my phone, charger to me whenever I need, because obviously, it's great. I want to have all this mindset and stuff, but until you go through a situation, because I tried to do it on my own. I've tried to wrestle them. I've tried to do life on my own. And it's just, sometimes you get to a dark place. You're like, man, I'm doing everything. It's just nothing seems to work. I just can't do this. And that in the moments like that, I think the Lord shows up for me, and he's like, he kind of empowers you, because I know that I can't do this life on my own. And knowing that and having the Lord walk with you and help you in moments like that, he's the one that fuels you. He charges your phone. He charges me up. So because obviously I want to have this great mindset. I want to do this stuff, but there's just a different type of confidence you walk on that mat with when you know that your Lord and Savior Jesus Christ is with you. And if you've never had that, I mean, you're missing out, because, I truly, obviously, I think I wrestled a great match, but the Lord and everything, just like before the match, after the match, during the match, everything about it, there was something about it that made it different. So obviously, my faith it's a big thing for me. I love representing it. I like to be bold about it because I think it's important. And, I think especially in this time, people can kind of get, I don't know, they get worried about what other people are going to think of them because of what they're doing or what they're saying. And hey, as long as God approves you, who else's opinion really matters? So that's something that I want to hit home right there.
Man, I knew just from watching highlights of you that you're obviously an elite athlete, but now that I get to talk to you, two things to stand out to me the most about you. You're a man of joy and you're a man of purpose. Just talking to you, I can just feel the joy just exploding from you. And then you've got a clear sense of why you're on this earth, and it ain't for your own benefit. You know, this life is about more than just you. And that is so inspirational, man. I'm thankful that you're on this earth and impacting lives, because you're changing thousands that you probably don't even realize.
I'm trying. I hope so. That's the best part, is I'm not big on social media at all. And so a lot of people reach out, and that's awesome stuff. But I think the best thing is just, obviously, social media is great. Phones are great. But seeing people in person and having interactions like that, that's what it's all about at the end of the day. And whenever I get to run into someone, I love to sit and talk with them, because they're like, oh my gosh, like, do you do this? Like, thank you so much. You've done it. And like, that to me is just like, I can't even describe it, because it's just like seeing the Lord's plan for you work out. That's just something different. Obviously, like I've been saying, my dad is like, God has chosen you for something great, and seeing it all play out and see it all unfold. And I don't know how to, the only thing I can think of it all is just grateful. I'm very grateful. I'm really grateful God put me on this earth. I'm really grateful he's gifted me with all these amazing opportunities that I can do awesome stuff and be here talking to you today. So hopefully a few other people could even hear this and be like, you know what? And all we need is just a little bit, who is this Jesus guy? Who's this God guy? Maybe it'll spark a whole revolution in their life like it has mine. So thank you very much for, this was awesome. I actually got to tell my story from a little bit of a different perspective today, my first person view. So that was special. Thank you.
Oh, man, thank you, Wyatt. You're amazing. I appreciate you.
Hey, thanks so much for being here today. Before you go, would you hit that subscribe button so that future episodes come right to you? Thanks so much, and I'll see you next time.